Kane, I shot this photograph. I shoot all my own photographs. I don't work for magazines or anything. I always shoot my own photographs. That ensures that I don't have to worry about um, copyright problems. So it's my own photograph. So when I shoot the photograph, I try to compose in the camera so I get a good composition right from the get-go. Okay? So right here is probably the center area, what I'm going to call the main area, and all the rest is going to be of less importance as I do this painting. So I'm going to do a pencil drawing, but I'm not going to make it terribly detailed. I like to put the pencil down and then do most of the detail with a brush as I paint. That's just the way I feel comfortable. Sometimes when I do a detailed drawing, I feel restricted and restrained what I can do with it. Like I can't go outside the lines, but I like to go outside the lines. And I like to mess with colors and things. So the painting may not end up looking like this as much as you think. So here we go. Right here, that's about halfway. And I don't like to have a dividing line halfway across, but that won't be a dividing line. So all of these buildings are going to be put in here kind of loosely, but I think you'll see that it's going to work. So here we go. I'm using a 2B pencil. This is a 2mm lead in a pencil holder, and it works fine. I don't really have an eraser, but I don't erase on my paper. If I make a mistake, I just leave it and I correct the pencil line and let it stay. When I erase, if I were to do that, it abrades the paper. And then when you put the paint down on that area, the paint goes differently and it's not good. I'd rather have the mistake show and not have the paint be less than ideal. Here we go. So this little area right here is like the valley. That's the Bay Bridge. That's the water. There's the hills way back over in Oakland or somewhere. So I'm going to put that right about here. So something like this. And I'm trying to be reasonably careful about the proportions here. I want this to look dramatic. So up like that. Little things like this building is higher than that one. Those things are important. So as I draw, I try to capture that. This building right here is going to go up about this much. I'm drawing fairly dark because I want the line to show. When I put paint down, that line is going to have less impact than it appears to have now. Because when the paint starts covering the line, you won't notice the line nearly as much. I'm holding the pencil in a flat way rather than this way. I think of this way as detail, and this way as big shapes. So if I get just the essence of the shapes here, that's all I really need to have. I'm mindful, like that spire and that building is the same height as this one. So it's the same height there. So that does not present a problem. Over on this side, the buildings are much closer and they're going to be a lot plainer. On this side, we have the Transamerica pyramid. So we're going to go up here. This building, I don't know if I'm blocking the way, right about there. The pyramid is going to go up. There's an angle here, something like that. If you don't get it pretty close, it won't look like the pyramid. And this part of the pyramid is a key element. So we're going to come down and get that. This pink building here, coming down at an angle. This building has a roof area here, about there, comes down, goes pretty far. I'm not going to draw every window. I am going to draw this. The thing about it is, I'm not trying to reproduce this image exactly. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to get is an impression of this building. I'm not chronicling what the building looks like. I'm not doing a historical rendering of it. I just want it to feel like a nice image that gives the feeling of this city building and this city busyness. It's terribly complex down in here. All kinds of storefronts, trucks, cars, streets, lane markings, all kinds of things. And I want to be reasonably on top of all that. Down here, there's a FedEx truck, which I'm not going to put in. I don't think it's all that interesting. So this angle here of the street, that's kind of important. So I'm going to put that about here. Something like that. Over here, this street, I'm not sure what street that is exactly. It probably says here, it doesn't matter to me. I think this street goes over under the tunnel. Stockton Street. Thank you, Keenan. That's my friend Keenan here helping me out today a little bit. I really appreciate it. So I'm happy to have him here. Well, thank you. So this building is kind of key because it's up front and we can kind of see it better. So it's got this kind of a feeling. And you can see I'm not terribly worried about absolute accuracy. So these buildings, the tops of them are above me. So that's a different kind of perspective feeling. So they don't necessarily go straight across. They can go at an angle, kind of this sort of a thing. So the fronts of these buildings are many. And so they're stacked up. There's just a sliver of space between each one, or a sliver of space showing in the front of each building. So my job is to kind of give that impression. There's signs. I'm jumping around here a little bit. I don't always draw windows. They're easy enough to draw with a brush. So that's often how I would do that. Going back over here, let's see. This is a whole bunch of little windows here. Signage. Street lights. It couldn't be more complicated. Okay. I'll tend to all this down here a little later. Right now, I've got a lot of cars that are parked along the side of the road. They're taking up not quite a half of the page. So I'm about right here. So this street is right here. So this car here is going to be right about, that's this one. Car window, car in front of that. Some kind of what we used to call a station wagon. Now it's some kind of an SUV or whatever. So I want to get this kind of right. Here's a wheel sticking out. Here's the rear lights. Doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be close enough to look sort of believable. This one has windows, of course. Rear view mirror. Adds a little believability. Other cars are out in front of it. And we're just going to stack them all up here. A bunch of tires. The roof line here of this car is sticking out pretty far. Okay. It's fun to draw big like this. If you haven't done it, or if you haven't done a large watercolor, give it a try. I mean, it really isn't all that different from doing a little small one. And you just use bigger brushes generally. This post here, I suppose, is kind of important. I'll put that there. I teach for the City of San Mateo Rec Department, and most of the students are afraid to do anything large. They want to do little tiny things. And it's okay, but you can get stuck there, and they're just fearful. So there's no real issue. So there's the cars on this side. Now let's go over and do like this car. I'm just eyeballing the size. I went to a school down south, Art Center, where they had a transportation major, and people there were designing cars. And oh, they were beautiful. God, the renderings of those cars were so well done. These young students, they were getting hired by Detroit automakers right out of class. They had a big show, and these young people, men, women, whatever. Boy, they were getting hired. They were so excited. And their work was just superb. They went on to design Toyotas and Porsches and Fords and everything. So this car, because it's sort of prominent in the beginning, I want the shape to be pretty believable. And once I start painting, it's going to go fairly quickly. Tires. Tires have width. The undercarriage of the car. Tire under there. I can't see over here. It's just dark. Tail lights. Putting a red tail light in always adds a little reality. License plate. That's pretty close. I can't see this tire. I know it's dark under there. There's another car right in front, maybe right about here. This looks like a van. Doesn't matter. It's just a vehicle. Can't see very much of the side. It's just the way the orientation is here. I'm going to put a window on the back of this van so it looks a little more believable as a van. And I know it must have a mirror, so I'm going to put a little mirror right there. Later, we're going to put shadows under the cars. There's another car right in front of it, farther away, so it's smaller. Okay. I was going to draw this before I got here. Then I thought, well, maybe it's good for you to see the drawing part too. Some people enjoy that, some people don't. I thought, well, isn't going to take me that long to draw it, so I'll go ahead and do it. So, William, are there any hills in the photograph that you need to worry about? I am on a hill looking down, and this street is flat, and this hill comes up, and the hill goes up and down. It's kind of going to look like that when I'm through, I hope. That's the plan. So light goes through the streets, and we're going to show dark and light as shadows and things hit the street. So there's a truck here. Not really interested in trucks, but maybe. So I have to draw the closest ones first and then stack them up from there. So this is kind of a fakey deal here. I'm not exactly drawing each individual car. I want it to just look like cars in a line. And when you get way out here, now's as good a time as any. Here is the bridge, part of it. Here's the abutment that holds the bridge up. And then there's hills back here, Berkeley Hills or something. Here's water. So we'll put some blue in there. That'll be nice. And then a bunch of busyness in here. Just trees and cars and who knows what else. Just busyness. So I'm going to just attack that with a lot of little tiny shapes. And that should take care of that. Okay. So there's so many facets of buildings here. And I'm just trying to get as many in as I can without it getting to not look right somehow. There's a sign here in Chinese, which if I can get that in, it would look pretty cool, I think. I don't write Chinese, but I fake it pretty good. I've had Chinese people come up and look at my paintings and have a quizzical look at my signs in my paintings going, that doesn't read right. Because it isn't really Chinese, but I try. And I have no respect to the Chinese language or the Chinese people, of course. But I do try to make it look kind of nice. All right. And there's a kind of a post here. Sometimes I don't draw these in. I just put in signs. No right turn, no parking, whatever it says. It adds to the feeling of city. And we're going to have some people in here. They're going to be a little on the small side. And people in watercolors can be a little bit abbreviated. They don't have to be terribly big or anything. So here's dad with a little kid. I always try to put a little sway in their figures so they look animated a bit. Doesn't have to be much. It always animates a little bit better if people are in there. And I'm a little lost as to where these people go. So this is crossing the street. So there's going to be a lot of lane markers here. There's going to be lane markers here. And out in the street here, more. And some of them go this way. I'm taking out all those trucks and we're going to put in some more vehicles. Maybe I'll put in one truck or two. Because all you're seeing is the top of the car, the roof, and maybe some wheels on the side. I kind of kid my students. A car is just a brick with two roundy things on the side. And I'm kidding, but I'm serious. That's all it takes sometimes to look like cars. There's going to be light coming in from the sides where light hits through the streets. There's going to be a whole bunch of flags and things out here. And let's see, this is a little landing for somebody's apartment or something. Okay, so here's an entrance to that. More of that. Okay. Now I'm going to get back a little bit and look at this and see what I think of it. I think we're coming along okay, but I think it could use maybe a lane marker here, something like that, just to add a little something to it. All right. There's a lot of wires going across, but I don't need to draw those in. I'm trying to be aware of the perspective and how it changes throughout the scene. But I'm just about ready to start painting. There's trees and things down here. I'll just put those in with a brush and not worry about them just yet. Signs, they're all over the place. I think I'm ready to start painting. And, well, let me back up. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit of detail in here. It's kind of funny how I can be pretty loose about how I do the drawing, and yet when you put it in paint, it can still look pretty believable. So let's start that process. I have two big pots here of water. These are stainless steel tanks I get from a restaurant supply store that I drill holes in the flange where I can put my brushes if I want. And my palette, currently I use as a removable area. And just so you can see carefully, I have 33 wells. It's more than I need. Somehow I use them up. So there's two ways to start. You can do wet on to wet. You need wet brush on wet paper or wet brush on dry paper. They both work. Eventually, it's going to all be wet, but I'm going to start, I think, with a wet brush and start that way. Sometimes when I go wet on wet, I get too wet and it gets all runny and gets hard to control. So I'm going to take a big brush. This is about an inch or so, maybe a little more than an inch, a flat brush. So I'm going to start with that. And as is standard procedure in watercolor, we're going to work from light to dark, more or less. I sometimes break that rule, but it'll keep you out of trouble if you're not going dark too soon. So I always want to make sure my brush is clean, so I rinse it out a little bit just to make sure there's nothing left from the last time. I don't use flat brushes all that often, but in a city environment, because it's all buildings and squares and such, they seem to work pretty good. So I'm going to try it here. I like to have my color at the top and then mix at the bottom with my water near that. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with a little yellow ochre and maybe some lilac, a pale, pale purple. And we're going to do this and call it the mother color. So that color is going to start to feel the essence color, if you know what I mean. Here we go. I like to start with enough paint so I can get through the passage I'm going to do. So I've got some ochre going on here. And I think just for fun, I'm going to go in and start with some big shapes. This is the place where using a small brush would not work in your behalf. It would take you too long to fill in the area, and you want to work quickly. So I'm going to be coming in here with grays and pinks and purples and all kinds of stuff just to get an interesting color going on. I said lilac earlier. You probably shuddered. Lilac, really? Yeah, I like purples and lilacs and so on. So I've got a little bit here, especially in the shadow side of things. So you can probably tell I'm not being perfectly careful about where I'm applying these colors. This brush at this size is really ideal for the moment. I won't be using it forever. So one pot is for rinsing color, and one pot is for fresh color. I have a 1/2 inch tape of Holbein soft tape all around. I doubt you can see it. When I'm all through with the painting, I'm going to pull that off, and it's going to put a nice white border around the edge. And it's fairly new, I think, new to me. So I just want to get some nice stuff going on here. I think a little cerulean blue might be good. So city scenes, buildings tend to be kind of on the grayish side, tan side. Um, they're not generally bright colors. Now the blue, I just put over the lavender and it gives it a whole nother kind of glow. You can't have too many layers or you kind of kill the color. So I'm mindful of that. These first washes are fairly light. They don't do all that much, but they start laying down tones that will blend in with the colors in the buildings later, and they will start to look believable. And by the way, when you're painting watercolors, they almost never look good until the end. So I don't panic anymore when they don't look all that great until the end. At the end, the last 5 minutes, it all comes together. At least that's the plan. I'm working on an easel here that goes up and down and slants. This is tilting a little tiny bit. And watercolor, we tend to like to paint on an angle. This is almost vertical, which means I'm risking that the paint can run. But I try not to put so much water that I get too much. I don't want it to run off. If it does, there's ways I can deal with it. This is sort of looking like a candy store right now, and that's okay. It isn't going to look that way throughout. It does add a certain color charm that will give the painting, oh, a quality, let's say, that I think can look nice. I'm sorry? Gives it a lot of warmth. Yes, it does. It can give it warmth, as Keenan says here. I always have a rag handy just in case I need to sop up any drips. Now my paper, you can't see it in the camera, but it is buckling. It's curving, which means the water may not go down exactly even, but it isn't that big a deal. You can still paint on it and it's going to work, and you don't need to worry much, maybe a little. I just mixed a little orange and a little aureolin, almost more of an experiment than anything. It's kind of strong. Whoa, is it ever? But it's okay. So these colors are mixing. I'm trying to be aware that those two signs, three signs, are going to be white. So I want to go around them more or less. I'm using a color now that not too many years ago, like 20 years ago, probably wouldn't have been used very much. And that is called neutral tint. I never heard of neutral tint. And Joseph Spookvich, one of my favorite painters, brought it up and used it. It's a transparent black. So you can darken things and they won't go muddy to a degree. You have to be a little bit careful. So I'm trying to see how dark is this. So this is street. This is street. Need a little more water. The control of your water is a crucial aspect of painting watercolor. If you get too watery and too runny, the paint gets real thin and weak. And watercolor dries about 30% lighter than what you put down anyway. So you can always put it down maybe 30% stronger than what you think it ought to be, and it'll probably dry about where you want it. And it takes a while to trust that. And it's one of the more difficult things that people have with watercolor. Is getting that, whoop, there's a drip. Well, we'll have to work that into the design somehow. Yes. So streets are not really black. They're really asphalt and varying shades of color. Kind of a bluish gray. Also, you need to know it's okay to have areas in your painting that are not totally descriptive. It's good for the viewer to decide what's going on. What is that? I don't know. And the viewer decides what's going on. Doesn't have to have everything all spelled out perfectly. Nice to have a little mystery. I'm loving this brush right now for this large painting. I wouldn't use this brush probably on a small painting. Whenever I'm using gray, I often mix a little color into it. So I'm putting a little bit of cerulean blue into this gray. It's subtle. I don't like to keep putting water on top of water on top of water. It gets too watery and the paint gets weak and it gets difficult to handle. So I'm going to go down on the street here. Probably could use a smaller brush, but I'm going to go for it here. So there's the street down below. About to there. Good enough. I'll put the cars in later. Now I'm moving to a mop. This is a soft-haired brush. And this is an Escoda, my favorite brand, one of my favorite brands. Very soft, holds a lot of water. And we're going to put this to good use now. So I want a little bit of color for the water. And so let's go get some. All right. Doesn't take much. There's our bay. A little lighter color with a little bit of gray. And let's put some mountains back in there, Berkeley, whatever. And I'll put in the bridge a little later. When I put water down on top of water, it does not absorb. It sits on the top and runs. It can be a big problem. So I try to be careful about that and not do too much water in one area. Uh-oh, I just mixed a bright pink out of a purpley pinky color. Normally, maybe I wouldn't use this, but since I mixed it, I thought, it might be fun. Let's try. Yeah, okay, that kind of worked. Though I like neutral tint, I try not to overuse it. It's real easy to get too too much with it. Black is kind of a tricky color. Black was not used in watercolor for years and years and years. And there's a lot of people still won't use black. And I respect that. I'm not of that mind. I use black now and then. I just don't go crazy with it. I haven't done it yet, but it's always a good idea to get back and look at your painting and see where it's going. Nothing too exciting yet here, but I'm not done. Let's see what else we got. Kind of a dark yellow gray here. I haven't put any windows in yet. And when I do, it's going to add sort of a reality to these buildings more than it has now. I'm putting yellow over the lavender and it's giving me a nice color here. I like this. I just found a nice kind of maroon, which I think might be nice down here. So this is the shadow side of the street. So I can afford to go a little darker here and not kill the spirit of this painting. Over here, we've got kind of a pinkish building here. I'm sorry? That's where you want to. Yeah. Later, this is all going to go darker. But I'm laying down some color now so that it will show through the dark and hopefully look interesting. I just broke out some olive green, and there are a few trees down in here, but I'm going to put more. I'm going to put a lot more. Cities tend to have that. Now these colors are going to dry lighter than what I put down. And so I have to be aware of that. Hey, Bill. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
So how are you describing the cross street?
Later, I'm going to have things that go horizontally.
Okay, so you're doing the vertical vanishing.
Yeah, I messed that up a little tiny bit.
But I see that you extended this here and you're already.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't have. But I can make that a dark street that way too.
But that's because you correct as you go.
A little bit, yeah.
It's flexing.
Yeah, those kinds of things can be tricky.
See, it is. And that's the stuff where it's in motion. You do it as you are going through the process, as you always tell me.
Mm-hmm.
It still works really well.
Well, I'm hoping. I don't get too rattled when it doesn't go well immediately, because I figure I can generally pull a cat out of the hat or whatever that saying is. Cat out of the bag, that's it. And these windows are not square. I mean, I'm not worried about the precision of them. I just need to kind of have a feeling, oh yeah, those are windows. The one color combination I like a lot is olive green and purple. It gives a nice dark color. You wouldn't think so, but it does. I'm looking at the monitor over here, and it seems so light compared to the actual painting. I just got a big, strong turquoise blue or green here. Let's see, where am I going to use this? I think somewhere down in here. Yeah, get a little strength in here. These are some storefronts and so on. So I try not to be too strong too soon. This is going to be a little bit powerful and give a little oomph to this. I like to be bold, but I like to be sort of in control too. Now that's all wet. So if I keep adding water to that area, it's going to go south. It's going to go badly. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit. That's the problem with working so vertical and then having a strong color run. But I'll deal with it. I do have a hair dryer here, and I may bring it out because I'm getting a little bit of runs here I don't really want. We can take a break if you're wanting to do that. Oh, good idea. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. Even a big brush like this goes to a small tip. So you can still get some fine lines, even though it's not particularly designed for that. I got a lot of water up here. Hair dryer. I don't want to dry it entirely. And I don't want the air from the hair dryer to blow the water around. So I try to go over the top and dry it without giving the water any direction. I'm already going to have to adjust and do some things here to see what I can do to make that work. I've got it on low power, so I don't want the air to be too strong and blow the water around. When I say water, I mean paint. While that's drying a little bit, I'm going to go down and work on this lower right corner. This is a number 14 long round brush by Princeton Velvet Touch. It's one of my favorite brushes. I really like it. I can get a lot of paint going and I can get fine lines too. But I'm going to use it to do this area down here. So these cars are primarily dark. So I'm going to make them dark, but I'm going to put in some color as well. So for instance, here's this grape colored car. I don't want it to be too raggedy edge here, so I'm going to go back, clean this up just a little bit. Okay, that's going to work for that. Later on, I'll put some tires in. This guy is totally kind of dark. Got to be careful with dark. It attracts a lot of attention. You may not want it there necessarily.
That's a passenger window.
Yes,
So it's a really strong forced perspective. Because you're so close to it.
I just want it to look like a car parked. And let's see, where'd that brush go? This is a big boy here. This is a number 20 from King Art. Holds a lot of paint. Whoa,
And that's the window.
this is the window. Here's a mirror. Here's a tire. Looks pretty rough, but that is a tire. One thing about painting large paintings like this, you get to use big brushes. Somehow, they're very satisfying to use. Well, there's a couple cars up closer to us. I think maybe a blue car would be good up here. Let's see what I can do. It's a little cobalt. Those are kind of rough cars, but they, I think, look like cars. And we got some out on the street here. Okay, I can deal with that. It's a different color though. What color are we gonna do? Here's a burnt orange kind of color I like. And I think we're going to liven up this part of the painting with this.
So you'll be putting the taillight color on top of
I
that?
shall, yeah. It'll be a little muted because it's on top of a dark, but I shall.
The thing about the lights is to be out of glass, there's all that dark stuff reflecting in.
Yeah.
Just like in here.
I'm using paint almost right out of the tube for these tires. Oh, this is drying up a little bit over here. Maybe we can go back in there and do some more stuff. So we're just going to go down in here and make some busyness. There's just stuff going on. Don't know what it is exactly. We're just going to make it look like busy city activity. So here's some greenery, trees. All kinds of poles and stuff in here. It's hard to know what to put in and what to leave out. I just think we're going to make it look as busy as we can. Telephone wires and all that good stuff. I'm trying not to go crazy with black, but a little bit is kind of helping. That helped. Kind of give a little dark side here, just a bit. At the end here, as we're getting, we're not at the end, but we're getting there, things start looking like a city more. Which is assuring to me because, I don't have my doubts, but still, it feels good to see it start to come together. I made Transamerica Pyramid kind of a dark purple. Just let that sit for a while. Most of this stuff is just an impression. It's not detail. And if it were detailed, this would take me about 3 days to do, which would be all right, but it's just not what I want to do. Starting to look like something a little bit. Good. One thing that can help with a cityscape like this is to try to have a nice variety of shapes so you don't have everything looking the same. That can really kill the excitement. You want to have a diversity of shapes and things so that people feel, I don't know, they're having some fun with it. I'm kind of a big believer in the big brush for laying down these big shapes that are not very descriptive. I'm well aware of that. One thing about being a painter that is kind of fun that other people don't get to do, you get to make the world what you want it, not necessarily what it is. So you get to play and add kind of qualities here that maybe aren't there. And that's kind of fun. So we're about an hour and a half, a little more than that, into this. And I don't know, it's going okay. Can I say it's exactly what I wanted? I have no idea. I didn't have an exact idea what this was going to be. Well, we got to do something with this street. So lane markers are often yellow. I'm going to go in with a strong orange, of a yellow orange, I guess. So now maybe we can go back and take care of some of these taillights. Cars look a little funny without them. So this car looks a little funny because of them. We've got to do some kind of a sky in here, and I'm not inclined to do a blue sky. Um, I'm going to do maybe an ochre sky. So the way I'm going to do it, maybe not slant this quite so much. I'm going to do a random application of water, clear water, pretty much clear water. I'm going to bring the water right into the buildings. And this is going to look like an active San Francisco winter day, or I don't know, something. Just don't want it boring. And so now, here's some ochre. So that's going to look a little like cloudy ochre day. I learned this from Herman Pekel, the great Australian painter. He does it with such ease. I try. Pekel is a genius. He was having shows, I think, when he was 12 years old in Australia. And he's fun. I'd love to go to Australia and take a workshop with him. I'm not in love with the sky I just did, but we'll see what we can do. Maybe a little bit of gray into it. Ooh, that's green. I don't know if I want that, but I'm committed. Well, so much for green skies. Hmm, nothing special. Colorful, yeah, but no,
I think what you're doing is good.
I think we're having some fun here. That's not the only goal, but it is one of them.
Instead, it comes together, something you got more to do on the outside of the apartment building.
I sure do. I sure do. When I'm painting, time stops. I don't think about it all that much. before I forget here, I want to thank Jim, the guy who's managing all the equipment here. He's doing an excellent job, and he's patient as all get out. He hasn't said a word over there. Well, this is definitely kind of in the abstract end of the spectrum. Okay with me. I'm trying to make sure I have enough value change, dark to light and so on. I don't want a wimpy finished piece here. I haven't even done any signs yet on the fronts of buildings. It's just a little bit of bridge detail in here. All right, let's do some signage. A little bit at least. I like this number 14 extra, well, long round. It's got a great point, holds a lot of liquid, but you can also do detail work with it. So I'm going to go with some red signs. Just like you got some flags sticking out here. That's a good one there. What else? Some over here. I don't want to use only red, but it is a striking color. So that red is, trying to remember the name of it. It's opaque. I'll think of it. Let's do some blue. So all this little detail stuff like this, kind of the finishing touches, but they can take forever. I'm trying to go through this as quickly as I can. We're going to put some white paint on top of the cars because cars are shiny and the top of them reflects. And it gives a nice kind of a feeling to the believability that the car is sitting in light. I'll show you what I mean. Now that car has light on it. So is that one, this one. It just does. And not only that, they have black shadow underneath. And when you put a shadow under a car, it fits the car on the ground. I didn't even do these cars. Take care of them now a little bit. All you need is a little sense of some tires and some shadows underneath, some windows. When you're painting, you know, there's a lot of rules and a lot of things you feel like you're supposed to do and all that. And that's all good. And I would say, listen to it. But in the end, your instincts are the most important thing that you've got. So I would follow that, presuming that your instincts are based on some good training and so on. But I don't entirely follow the rules. I've broken all kinds of rules here today, and I'm okay with it. There's some areas over here that look a little murky to me. And I keep thinking, well, what am I going to do with that? Well, let's make this into a more discernible shape. Might help a little bit. Oop, that's a little strong. Yeah, a little too strong, I think. Let's just tone that back a little bit. That's better. All right. Okay, remember I talked about white? Now we're going to do it. Let's see. Maybe a little bit of white right in here. Maybe that's a little too much, but I'd rather have it, I think, than not. Let's kill this a little bit.
That the light coming down the streets.
That's the light coming in from the side streets, I think.
Yeah. Was meant to be.
It's not showing so much in here as it could, but sort of. All these little its and bits and stuff seems to add to the charm. I don't know. What's that? Yeah. And we're going to get some kind of a skin tone for these poor folks. Okay, how about some NH? Boy, I'm making a mess over here. That's why it's fun. Okay. So I want to make some wires in the sky. So I need a pretty wet and runny fluid paint. So let's hope this is kind of it. Kinda. Okay, let's see, where are we gonna go? From where to where? How about up high? That's always scary because you can blow it, but it also adds, the lines can't be too thick or they look phony. Maybe we need some dark ones too. I see a lot of lines. I don't know where they're going. There's what I'm looking for. Well, you're going to see me do an impression of Chinese now. With apologies to all Chinese-speaking people, I'm doing the best I can. This brush looks really beat up. That's better. That's better. I can't see these characters very much. They look like Chinese guys.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Doesn't have to be readable.
No. It's funny, but a little bit of lettering kind of adds just a touch of reality to it all. Enough.
Yeah, he said he could. So, hopefully you're finishing up.
Pretty quick, yeah.
Okay.
Am I start to be a problem here?
No.
let's call that a day.
Good.
Thank you for your patience, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, that was fun.
Well, you don't have email. I'll see if I can send it.
I
via
do have
text.
email now.
Oh, okay,
I picked up a computer yesterday,
okay.
so
Because I can send you the link once we upload it to YouTube. So if you want to share it to anybody.